Reveille, 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 and fall in formation, operators, for another episode of the Sitrep Podcast, your source for historical military wargaming news, discussion, hobby, and, hey, once in a while, even a little bit of gameplay. I am your host this morning, Oriskany Jim, and today I am joined by first, he is the Gandalf the Wise to my Gandalf the Goof, Mr. Piotr. Piotr, how does the day find you, my friend?
Hello everybody, not too bad, just woke up and it's actually 6 p.m. my time, so life couldn't be better, but I've been at work today and we have a shitty weather, so a cup of coffee is what you need.
Yeah, we might have some pretty bad weather ourselves here pretty shortly. We got Tropical Storm Fiona coming towards us. It's supposed to turn north before it hits us, but we'll see what happens. But meanwhile, we also have our returning champion, the George Washington of the Sitrep Podcast, the one who started it all. Welcome home, Bill Sitrep Six. Mr. Bill, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, good. Thank you, sir. Glad to be back. And man, you guys have done an amazing job. And I've been missing you guys, so it's good to be back.
All right, so thanks very much. Let me go ahead and bring back our cameras here. All right, so here we are live and in person. Our cameras are all in sync. Mine's reversed, but you guys know what I look like. Left to right, right to left, I'm equally ugly. But here we are for another episode of the Sitrep Podcast. If you guys are watching this, please remember to drop a like on the video. It really does help us out. We have been absolutely curb stomping the subscribers lately. We're getting like 2 or 3 a day lately, which for us is a big deal.
Yes.
But we're across the River Rhine. The River Rhine was 900. We're now at the 5-yard line. That was 950. We're now past 950. So hopefully you guys are going to help us out with, comments, subscriptions. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, drop a comment, even if it's, hey, Jim, you still look stupid. Or I just realized now I forgot to shave before the podcast, whatever. Or drop a like, or hell, drop a dislike. Any interaction on the YouTube algorithm helps us out. Of course, we much prefer a like rather than a dislike, to be honest. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and kick off the show with some hobby review. So, hobby. What's going on? Piotr, I know you said you've been really busy at work lately. Have you been doing any hobby lately, or?
Oh yeah, so it's September, so what better can you do during September than invade Poland? So I invaded Poland.
There you go.
In Poland Defiant in 1939, so you can see both episodes online. Sadly, as usual, the Germans won, but I managed to stop them as long as I could. We played the first day of the campaign during the videos, so you can check out and see if the game is for you. It has a nice cheat pool mechanic into it and some few cool ideas put inside. Like I really like the introductions when it comes to the airplanes and how you need to put your panzer divisions alongside with some infantry divisions or mechanized divisions, so they are not fully operational when they are alone. This is also very intriguing for me because most games actually do not impose this penalty upon panzer units or armored units, and this one does. So it's really cool, and I like the game. I finished it. They did not manage to capture Warsaw, but still the odds are overwhelming, and the Poles are not meant to win. They just need to delay the Germans as best as they can.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a typical, not every, the hidden Achilles heel of historical wargaming is not every battle sometimes makes for the best war game, or if it does, it's going to have some, this is especially true for modern war, you got to have some asymmetrical victory conditions. We'll get some more into that when we get to the British versus the Iraqis. Holy God, talk about a curb stomping. Nevertheless, it is very, very possible for the Iraqis to win that game. The Iraqis came that close 3 separate times, if you check out that stream. But, yeah, those were great videos. It does take a little bit of time for our community maybe to get used to operational scale wargaming, or maybe we got to figure out a different way to present that to you guys. Operational scale wargaming is a different beast. I love it. That's kind of where I got started back in the early 80s. You were mentioning interdiction strikes for our interdiction operations for aircraft. Yeah, it's fun to drop bombs on tanks, but especially in World War II, before anyone had like precision ordnance, that's what air power did. Everyone likes calling in an airstrike in bolt action or flames of war. That's not how aircraft are usually used, especially in World War II. You used it to bomb the bridge 50 miles back behind the lines, and what that would do is that when you set up your table, you're up against 5 enemy tanks instead of 20 enemy tanks because they're having a tough time getting stuff up to the front line. So that's the introduction that you're talking about.
Yep.
So
that's actually all.
Okay.
Because I'm, curve stomp when it comes to work. We're introducing a new electronic data management system at work, and it's finally going to run on the 3rd of October. So I'm not getting really too much sleep lately.
Apparently, curb stomp is going to be our word for the day. We're just going to say curb stomp 17 more times. Curb stomp until it just loses all meaning. So, Bill, I know that you've had some changes in your life recently. You've been moving around. I don't know if you've had any time for hobby, but if you have, like what's been going on with you?
Well, we literally did what you see a lot of people doing these days. We sold everything and moved out of our 3,200 square foot house, and we're now living in a tiny home of about 700 square feet. Literally, our house is big as my old master bathroom was.
I was going to say, that's half the size of my apartment. My apartment is already too small.
So, yeah, I mean, when we decided to do this and move to the Florida Keys, there's not much real estate down here. So you're really tight for space. But we sold everything. I mean, I'm hobby-wise, I kept a few board games that I could play. But miniature-wise, I have nothing. So I actually looking to rebuild. And Jim and I talked about this the other night. I just downloaded the rule set for Fistful of Toes, the 3rd edition. So it's modern-ish warfare. They go from 1915 to 2015 is this rule set covers. And I'm going to be buying 3 mil miniatures and coming up with a series on how to do wargaming in big battles in a very small space, and how to store it and all that. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And I've made the pledge that I will only do one system at a time. I will not buy something and go, I'm going to buy that and buy that. It's going to be because I'm limited on space. So you have to kind of concentrate, Yeah,
the best way to defeat a lead mountain is to not let it start in the first place.
Exactly.
Or at least keep it manageable. Definitely. All right. So for me, and there's been, it depends on what you call hobby. I mean, we've been doing a lot of wargaming lately. So the first thing we did about 2 weeks ago was 1 to 1800 Battle of Savo Island.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of missed the 80th anniversary on that. 80th anniversary on that was night of August 8th to 9th, 1942. So we were a few weeks late. But that's okay, because when it comes to the Solomons, man, there are an absolute list of naval battles to pick from. And I always say this 100 times, I'll say it just once more. If you're interested in getting into naval combat, especially in World War II, here's the place to start. The battles are all relatively small, and they're relatively even, which is really weird for naval games. Naval games are usually over before they begin. Jutland, Lady Gulf, Midway. I mean, these are the big famous battles where, with possible exception of Jutland, there's a clear winner. And it was never really in doubt. Here with all these tiny little battles in the Solomon Islands, no, it could definitely swing either way. So we did this 2 Sundays ago. We could have done it in digitally, but we decided to do it in miniature. It poses challenges, guys. I won't lie. And I'm clicking around other people's YouTube channels and other gamers and stuff like that. Not many people do games live on camera, miniature games. So we may do more of these recorded in the future, because doing this stuff live is a bit of a challenge, especially when you don't really know the rules. But that part's on me. We were also featured on the website owned by our old friends on Tabletop. So they've been going through a series where they have been going through different content creators So they had, I think Panzer Kaput was on there. He has a YouTube channel. Our friend Warhammer Grimace, he's another Gulf War veteran. He has an e-zine that he manages. So there's a whole bunch of people that have their own, YouTube channels and have their own content creators. And they've been going through them one at a time, doing these short little interviews. So, I mean, it was a great opportunity to put our logo up in front of a whole bunch of, subscribers again. And of course, it's always fun to, interact with our old friends over in Ireland.
Yeah.
Never pass up a chance to do that. Let's see what else has been going on. Okay, so we also did, because we've been doing a lot of World War II lately, and we're going to continue doing a lot of World War II because we're kind of marching through the 80th anniversaries, and we're in the fall of 1942 right now. This is where World War II finally turns around. There's a lot going on in September, October, November of 42. It's one of the busiest times of the war. That said, we did want to sort of remember our roots a little bit and make sure that we did at least some moderns. So with the bad news in the UK over the last week, we decided to show our friends over in the UK a little bit of love. What better way to forget your troubles than take out your frustrations on some Iraqi armor? So we set up our old friends, the Royal Scots Dragoons Guards again, and had them, absolutely kick the crap out of 52nd, specifically 90th Brigade, 52nd Iraqi Mechanized. So this was the big division. The first UK Armored fought at least 5 or 6 divisions over there, but the biggest one, or the best equipped one, and they fought them several times during a running battle, about 36 to 48 hours, was the 52nd. And they really, the 52nd wasn't really a division by the time these guys got done with them. But to Piotr's point about the invasion of Poland, this is where we really see some serious asymmetrical victory conditions. A long time ago, not really a long time ago, for the 30th anniversary, I set up pretty much the whole front end of 1st Marine Division against the front end of 3rd Armored and 5th Mechanized divisions in a big battle that they had going through the 2nd Burm Line, 25 February 1991. It's the big 1st Marine push into southern Kuwait. Long story short, the game lasted 12 hours. It took like 15 turns. The Iraqis were completely tabled. It was a game about 6 times the size of this one. And when you figured up the points, the Marines actually lose that game. Like 156 to 162 or something. I mean, it's a narrow loss, but the victory conditions that are set out by Tactical Combat Middle East by Toshesh Miniatures, that's the edition of Panzer Leader that's on display here. It's available at Wargames Vault and also on their own website. You can lose the game as a coalition player, believe it or not, super fast. I'll put it to you this way. You get 1 point for every Iraqi unit destroyed, just period. That's pretty much all you get. The Iraqis get a point every time one of your units gets pinned down, because somebody in that unit has like a shell splinter or has to go back to the aid station. You get 2 points as the Iraqi player if that unit was a tank or a helicopter or an aircraft. You get 5 points for everything unit that's destroyed, unless it's a tank or an APC, in which case then it's 10 points. God forbid it's an aircraft, it's 25. So you lose one aircraft, you have to table the Iraqi player without taking any further casualties just to break even. Oh, by the way, if you fire your weapons into certain hexes, the damage of your weapon, like that 52 for these challengers, counts as Iraqi victory points because collateral damage. You're not allowed to shoot your weapons into certain hexes. So without incurring massive penalties. That goes for off-board artillery and airstrikes as well. It's a tough. I mean, it tries to put you in the shoes or in the boots of a Gulf War commander. You have so much firepower at your disposal. You got to be careful, where it goes. Speaking of which, as I was making, we sort of had a bonus stream where we were rebuilding these British units. It turns out I didn't really like the tables that we featured on our Where the Sausage is Made series sometime last year. So surprise, surprise, I'm going through it again. This is just a small part of the table where we're looking at some of the more modern weapons. You see there is some methodology in where we're getting this. So basically I've been doing some Excel hobby, if you even want to call that hobby. And for tomorrow, we are looking at, again, some World War II. and some special forces. So this is the LRDG, or the Long Range Desert Group. The night of 13 to 14 September, they launched Operation Caravan. That was part of a larger Operation Agreement. This is in part of the build-up to the Battle of El Alamein, where these guys launched, along with the SAS and the SIG. There's a whole bunch of different special forces at play here. But these guys were the Long Range Desert Group, and they launched a raid on an airfield at a place called Barca in northern Libya. And here's where they cleaned out like 35 or 40 Axis aircraft and really helped really helped weaken Rommel's air support that was going to be available to him in the upcoming battles, plural, of El Alamein. So that's pretty much what's been going on with me as far as hobby goes. This game is going to be live tomorrow at 2, so we hope that you guys are interested and you check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah. Before we go into... I'm sorry, go ahead, Piotr.
The British are going to kill the Italians with the badass stubble that each of these guys is having on his face.
Hey, it took me a little while to render that. All right, so I do the best I can with these images. I tried drawing them by hand, like we did for our 13 days, 13 hours project. They come out okay, but it's better to just grab what you can find. These guys were just too clean shaven, so I had to give them some kind of beard. This little SAS/LRDG guy, of course, he already has his beard. So in order to match, I had to go ahead and give him a little bit of Don Johnson there. Because in all seriousness, and we'll go into the details on this in tomorrow's stream, the Long Range Desert Group, I mean, no disrespect to the SAS, but the Long Range Desert Group, man, these guys are absolutely insane. The deserts that they went through were not the deserts that everybody else went through. So where the North African Desert War takes place is along a really, really thin coastal strip of semi-habitable desert. I mean, people do live there. There are roads, there are train tracks, there are airfields, there are towns. I mean, yeah, it's the desert, it's harsh conditions, but where these guys would operate is to the south of that, straight through the Qatar Depression, through the Libyan Sand Sea. I mean, the absolute heart of the Sahara. Roll for encountering random Jawas and sand people, or Arrakis sandworms. You might as well be on another planet. And there's literally no roads. Their missions would be 1,200, 1,400, sometimes 1,500 miles. And the vehicles only have enough gas for 700 miles. So how do they do that? They have, okay, here's a desert that goes from where you live in Poland all the way to, let's call it London. Between Poland and London is nothing but sand. No roads, no towns, no palm trees, no oasis, no rail line, no ports, no airfields, no nothing. No camels. Like literally animals don't live out here. It's absolutely a moonscape. Somewhere in the middle of that, you'll find 3 rocks in a pile, and buried 20 feet under that is all the water and fuel you'll need to go the rest of the way. We staged it there 6 months ago. Those 3 rocks should still be there. Good luck. And these guys would do it. They were mostly New Zealanders and Rhodesians at the time. They later would get some crazy Irishmen in there as well, some Scotsmen, and it got a little bit more eclectic after that. But some seriously capable people.
Yep. In the desert, you need a beard to survive.
The point is, you've got like a canteen of water to last you 6 months. Do you spend any of it on shaving? Is where, before I got off on my ridiculous tangent. So you see these guys with beards all the time. There's a lot of famous photographs of them. And this is also where the SAS got their start, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Meanwhile, we got some people here in the community. Jen has retracted a message. I don't know what's going on there. Gaz is with us. Hello, Gaz. How you doing?
Yes.
So Gaz says, how do you guys feel about doing an engagement as a training exercise where peer nations such as USA fight off against UK and their other allies? We've got the counters for it. I don't mind doing it, at least in my game systems. Whether or not I have the armies available in miniature doesn't... that's actually a pretty good idea, though.
Mm-hmm.
Set up something like Fort Irwin out there, or 29 Palms, or National Training Center, two friendly forces. It basically becomes red and blue or whatever.
Well, they just did that down at JRTC down at Fort Polk. There were some elements of the British Army down there fighting, their American counterparts. So they actually Forces YouTube channel. I think it's Forces is the name of it. They actually had a video series of the Brits at Fort Polk fighting our Op 4 guys. So it was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't think who was it? Was it 2-7 Marines? Who were the Marines out of 29 Palms got tooled up by the Royal Marine Commandos?
Oh
yeah. Yeah, I don't think they've left that down yet.
But you know what? There's a lot more to that than what the news put out there. It sounds like it wasn't as one-sided as they made it out to be. So
well, it's also like putting 82nd Airborne or 101st Airborne up against Delta Force, or
Hey.
No, I'm serious. There are your regular grunts. Then there are your, like most war games have this. They have regulars, veterans, and elites. Okay,
Right.
Marines for every. I can say this. I'll swear on the Eagle Globe and Anchor right here. So they're better than the average Army person of a similar MOS. A similar MOS. I mean, I was a supply clerk. I wouldn't want to fight like an Army Ranger. I'd get the shit kicked out of me, clearly, back in the day. But I tell you what, I'd kick the shit out of an Army supply clerk. As long as he's a supply guy.
Yeah, I could see that.
Also, this is 35 years ago.
Supply chain fights.
Hey, where did you get that field jacket? Dude, the closest we came to actually getting to actual combat was when, I'm not kidding, the British tried to steal some of our Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex was brand new back in those days, and it got cold over there. Let me tell you something. And then, before you know it, there's a hole cut in the chain link fence, and someone has cut the lock off the back of one of our bay doors or something. And we see some people wearing our Gore-Tex. Well, wait a minute. That's back in those days. It was. Nowadays everybody has Gore-Tex, but back then, it was a little bit more of an item. All right, so cool. Let's see. Gas also says, I know it isn't historical, but we do train on exercises in Germany where we engage each other in war games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly. The Panzer leader. Let's see if I still have that sheet up. Because we do get into that. We do. I mean, whenever we show like, why is it that the Challenger doesn't hit as hard as the Abrams, even though they both have 120 millimeter guns? This is because the British 120 millimeter gun is a rifle. What do you have against rifles versus smoothbores? Or you're just American? No, it's because, and again, I show all my work is the point of the spreadsheet. What's really hurting the British guns here is their ammunition is in 2, if not 3 parts. So a platoon, again, this is a platoon-based game. A platoon of Abrams will put more firepower, a greater volume of firepower, at a given range over a given time span than a similar troop of Challengers, only because the Challengers have to load their ammunition in 2 or 3 parts. Meanwhile, 125 millimeter guns for Soviet or later Russian era guns have automatic loaders, which, believe it or not, are not as fast as human loaders. Then why put them in there? It's to make the tank smaller and theoretically less of a target. Recent events have sort of disproved that little notion. But at least that was the idea. So all those factors get worked into those spreadsheets, and we try to show it to where, okay, you can put a U.S. Army, you can put together a mechanized brigade or a tank-heavy team or whatever it is you want to do, a tank-heavy task force, up against, Royal Scots Dragoon Guards and see what would happen. And you'll get a pretty good result. I mean, depending on terrain, depending on tactics, depending on mission, a whole bunch of other factors. But at least on a technical, as like a thought experiment, you might actually come out with a pretty good answer. At least that's the idea.
Yeah. It's a good explanation.
Alrighty. Supply chain fights can be scary. Gas says, I had finger trouble. I needed to correct some spelling mistakes. No worries. Perfect, Gas. No, put that back. It was hysterical. Oh, no, we missed a joke. That's what we get for not paying attention to chat. Gaz apparently said something hilarious. Jen was laughing, and then Gaz pulled it out of the chat. That's okay. Let's see. Meanwhile, our community has been, it's actually been a little bit of a slow couple weeks in Discord, but there are a few items we did want to go over. Oh, real quick, I've got some long-range scissor group guys that we have in 28
Nice.
millimeter. I would do this game in 28 millimeter tomorrow, although again, we're not going to be doing too many more miniature live streams. We'll still have some recorded content. I did get some new headphones. We are trying out some new mics. There are some technical limitations we've been bouncing up against, not just in the Savo Island stream, but also the 2 previous 7 Days to the Rhine streams, especially now that I finally got a tank game I can play. I do want to do more miniature content. It's just a little tough right now, at least in a live stream format. So the only reason we're not doing, well, that's one reason. Number 2, I don't have any Italians in 28 millimeter. And I don't have, Ju-52s, the big German cargo planes in 28 millimeter. Those would be like 2 feet across. So it's a big Air Force raid, a big airfield raid. I can't really set it up in miniature. It's just a lot easier to do it virtually. Okay, so first of all, our community has been, putting up some stuff. This is our friend Dylan, or LSR2590. He's been on the stream a bunch of times. In fact, he was a guest here on the podcast once. He's been building some British sailors for the Modest War of 1882. So this is one of those tiny little wars that nobody ever talks about. Apparently there was a bit of an independent / religious revolt in the Sudan. I think it started off in 1879, and the British didn't get involved with it right away. They started attacking other people in the Sudan, where we heard this before, Darfur. Then they started attacking other nations, Egypt, Chad, or what would become today, Egypt, Chad, and Ethiopia. Finally, the British got involved, and it turned into a little, typical late Victorian era colonial fracas. So apparently these are not Marines, but they are just sailors given rifles. Again, they're so strapped for manpower that they use whatever guys they can. So again, it's weird to see, number one, sailors as combat infantry, and then on top of that, on desert terrain. At least we see they're on his bases. But clearly that was the situation at the time. Our friend John Sowerby has been building more stuff for War of the Roses. This time he's working on some bills and bows. So these are archers, and it looks like some sort of pikemen or pole armsmen. So there are the archers. He's gearing up to start playtesting a new game that's coming out called Blood and Crowns. Apparently he knows the designer, and he's going to help the designer with some playtesting. So that's why he's been working on this for weeks, if not months, building up more and more of these forces. I've also, I'm going the wrong way. I also checked out our friends at Dust Creek House down in near downtown Fort Lauderdale. It's a small gaming club here in Broward County, but it's a great gaming club. Actually, it's a lot bigger than I thought. I shouldn't say it's a small club. It's pretty big, their total membership. But John was mixed up in a bit of a tournament of, oh Lord, let me see if I can even try to pronounce it this time. Das Bellas Antiquitatis. Hopefully I came somewhat close to pronouncing that right. This is why everyone just calls it DBA. DBA is a small miniature game. I think these are 15s miniatures, 15 millimeter miniatures for medievals and ancients. These guys use it mostly for ancients, but it is very useful for medievals as well. It was run by James Dundorf, and it's a fast little game. You can get 3 or 4 games in an afternoon if you're determined. Obviously, he's got great miniatures here, and it was a little bit of a tournament. It's some kind of qualifier for something that I think leads up to an event in Historicon. So 2022, we already had 2022 Historicon, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're already gearing up for 23, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, the tables are only it's designed to be played on a pub table. So the table is 2 by 2.
Okay.
And the game is 6 pages long. The cheat sheet is 2 pages, front and back of a regular letter size paper. And I saw the game. It takes all of about an hour tops to get through a game. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, I love the miniatures.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we've got for hobby. Yeah, so good to go.
So, Jim, did you actually see the game in person, or was it just via Discord?
Oh no, I was there.
Okay.
I
Did
didn't.
they tell you what kind of miniatures those were? Who made them?
Oh no, I didn't. I didn't ask who the manufacturers were. I'm just pretty sure this. I'm not even 100% sure on the scale. I'm pretty sure it was 15.
It looks like 15.
Yeah. It could be 10, but I doubt it. Now that I think about it, yeah, it's got to be 15. But yeah, they had Romans versus. Oh God, I had that stuff all written down somewhere. Seleucids, and then there was another game going on the corner, and then they all switched. It was like a 5 or 6 person like mini tournament, and again, it's a qualifier. Now whoever won that tournament is in some sort of like quarterfinals, I think it is. And they'll play again later on in the year against some other people. And again, I think it's building up something in Historicon or something called Hurricane. There's another small convention taking place. I think it's next week. So now it's not confirmed because I'm not promising anything, but I might be taking a game of 7 Days to the River Rhine down there next Saturday to actually play, to introduce that to an actual club. So I guess I better start reading the rules again because my grasp of the rules are still a little shaky. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Nice.
So that pretty much, again, it was kind of light last 2 weeks in hobby. I guess people are busy. I know I've been busy. So there's not been a whole lot going on for hobby. In our Discord. So everyone in the who's watching, if you want us to talk about your project, or if you want us to feature your miniatures, battle reports, gameplay, whatever it is that you've got going on, drop it in our Discord. The invite to our Discord is automatically set up to accept you as soon as you click on the link. It's in the description of this video. You might have to click on See More to find it at the bottom of the description, but you know the link once you see it. You click on it, you're automatically in.
Yeah. Yeah, Hurricane is next weekend. So.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right, so we were talking about him, and we apparently summoned him, John Sowerby. We were just showing your DBA photos, John. Winners of the DBA tournament here qualify for regionals on April 1st. Okay, cool. The miniatures are mainly Essex, 15 mil. All right, sweet. I was right about the scale. But no, I didn't. I forgot to ask who the manufacturers were. There were also some Bayuda miniatures in there as well. Sweet. All right, thanks very much for coming out, John. Appreciate it. All right. Let me put my phone up here so I don't have to look down to read comments all the time. All right. Worry about that later. Oh no, I lost my... Sweet. All right, so this is normally where we would pivot to the news. Our friend Marty is not with us today, clearly.
I can do a little news if you want me to, Jim.
Oh, okay.
Let me pull up our page because we get a lot of stuff posted to our Facebook page. So there was one I want to talk about. Let me switch over to podcast page. 2 seconds here. And groups. Okay, now it's not going to give me my page. Let me switch to my phone here because that'll be easier. I'm trying to do it on my tablet.
All right.
But there's some British paratroopers, of all things, for World War II being produced.
Why would we want to talk about British paratroopers on September 17th?
I don't know. Why would we ever talk about paratroopers in this podcast? But
no, I'm just talking about on September 17th.
Right, and
yeah.
it is the anniversary of Arnhem.
There you go.
A bridge too far for many people. So I actually saw that they had they jumped into Holland this weekend for the anniversary. So of course I can't find the one page, but yeah, it's Empress Miniatures, I believe, is putting out British paratroopers in 28 mil. So they look really sharp. Andy Hobday still over there working on some Gangs of Rome, 2 mechanics. If you haven't seen that game, it's a skirmish battle set in obviously ancient Rome. That's a good one. Also, Rubicon Models. I don't know. Do you guys follow Rubicon Models at all?
Yep.
They are producing a whole bunch of Vietnam stuff. I mean, it's looking amazing. There's definitely some things to cover there in the future for Rubicon. But right now they're showing off They do you know what? Rubicon Models, they kind of cross the bridge between a model kit and a wargaming kit to some extent. So it is pretty amazing. I mean, they just showed off a kit, the Centurion Mark V with a dozer blade on it.
Okay.
So just amazing stuff. Also, the Tabletop Gaming Awards came out. You guys need to look at those and see if you agree with their choices. I'm not exactly sure if I agree with those, but do definitely check out Tabletop Gaming. Other than that, let me see if there's anything really historical. We get a lot of stuff that's non-historical related to on our page. I've been trying to actually moderate that a little bit more, but
this is on the Sitrep Podcast Facebook page?
yeah, on our Facebook page.
Okay.
Yep. So Battlefront is going to be putting out a Bulge. I'm assuming it's Battle of the Bulge. They say Bulge British, but it's October 15th. There'll be a new book coming out and new models. I mean,
I was going to say,
they got to be reissued. Maybe I'm cleaned up a little bit, but
oh, Battlefront. Sorry,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Flames of War.
Yep.
So that's pretty much newsworthy stuff that's come out. There's a lot of other things. I mean, if you're looking for something modern wise, Jim, no, you weren't at the Walking Dead boot camp with us, but at the Walking Dead boot camp, Foreground showed off their mall in 28 millimeter. The shopping
I saw it
mall.
on camera. Yep.
Yeah, so it's funny now that Blacksite Studio has released a shopping mall in 28 mil as of yesterday. So, and this one's actually a 2-story mall. So if you're looking for something for a modernish, post-apocalyptic, whatever, I mean, there's Blacksite Studio does some pretty good. They've kind of picked up the helm from Foreground. Well, you know, Foreground doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But as far as pre-colored terrain and stuff, you could go to Blacksite Studio. And they used to be a sponsor of our program, so give them a look if you're looking for some good MDF terrain.
Cool.
That's pretty much it, what I found for news.
Yeah, a little bit of house news. I mean, clearly Bill's back, so that's the first big thing. We'll be gearing up for some more LL Lemaine content in the future. I've got all that in 15 millimeter. Maybe doing some battle group, not Battlefront, battle group.
Yeah.
I've got the books for that, and of course I've already got like tons of miniatures for 1942 and early 43. So keep a lookout for that. Piotr and I might be doing some more Desert Leader, so keep an eye out for that. We don't want to do Panzer Leader all the time, even though it is consistently our most popular content. Every time we put Panzer Leader up, we gain at least 5 to 10 subscribers. That thing does 400 or 500 views, and it just blows up on other Facebook pages where we post our stuff. But we don't want to ring that bell too often. And again, we did technically Panzer Leader just last week. So we'll be doing some other stuff, and there's also some miniature content coming out soon as well. I did get some video of that tournament that we were mentioning before with John down at Dust Creek House. I'm going to try to put that together into some pre-recorded content. Also, hey, it's Ancients. I mean, we do all historical. It'd be nice to, sort of stretch our legs a little bit. Why always do the same things over and over? So we'll actually have some Ancient content, hopefully up in the next week on the outside. As soon as I can, splice everything together. It was very rough and ready video. I was down there with a cell phone. I didn't have like a big ring light and a camera and a whole, mobile studio or anything like that. But, yeah, so we're definitely keeping an eye on that. We are starting to gear up. It's already mid-September. Good God, where is 2022 gone? It's already mid-September, which means we are about 6 weeks out from what has become a somewhat unofficial tradition, the Sitrep Halloween special. Mm-hmm. So it's been literally set up for a year now. Ever since we did that Sitrep skirmish into the bowels of a abandoned Russian bioweapons lab where we ran across some Cthulhu creatures, people have been talking about colonial marines versus aliens in Sitrep skirmish. Yeah. There have been people waiting literally since last Halloween to get in on that game. So I'm going to reach out to them, give them first call. I don't know if they're still interested. They always say they are, but we'll see what happens. I'll keep everyone posted because there's a few people that want to get in on that game. Maybe we'll run it more than once. I mean, with the amount of work it's going to take to put all those figures together, we might as well run it more than once. But it'll be fun. And that's about it. We have some LL Main coming up, more Solomons, and more 7 Days to the Rhine.
Nice.
So, cool. Anything with news or any comments from you, Piotr? You're being way too polite and quiet over there.
Yeah, I'm just listening. But when it comes to the news, if you don't know, if you know the manufacturer Micro Art Studios, they are doing some pretty infinity terrain. But lately they have released a nice bundle of Normandy terrain. It's already pre-painted, 28 millimeter, and it's looking gorgeous. So if you want to set up a small table with an idyllic Normandy village before British paratroopers lay down there, you might do that as well, because it's really nice. That's for the news, and I really like the info about Empress putting some more stuff out, because I absolutely adore and love their miniatures. I have a ton of sadly unpainted stuff from them when it comes to the Vietnam era. But I think I will take a look at the figures in the near future, as soon as I come back from a little trip that I'm going on next week to see the First World War battlefields. So we shall see how that goes. I will also try to post some items on our Discord page, some pictures and maybe some videos if I will manage to record any of them. But it seems it's going to be a tightly packed trip. So 1 week of sightseeing, also battlefield sightseeing. So I'm looking forward to it because I need some rest lately.
So this is out by like Tannenberg. You're heading. I mean, we're talking about like the Eastern Front battlefields, right?
Nope, the Western ones.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're going into France and Belgium and places like that?
Yeah, France, Belgium. So Ypres, Cambrai, and stuff like that.
Nice.
We shall see.
So Piotr, I was just looking at the Micro Art Studio page about that terrain, and you can literally buy an entire town. It's like 400 euros, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, nice thing is you don't have to paint it. You could weather it a little bit. I mean, they've already weathered it for you, but you could set it up on a tabletop and play bolt action or battle group or anything, and it's beautiful. So nice call.
Yeah, and also if anyone is interested in 6mm, you can find this Gods of War Lee, the guys from Poland. They have this 6mm 19th century system that started with American Civil War, of course, why not? And now they are doing Togo, so the 19th century, naval battles. I believe the release is coming soon. So they are posting some nice renders of ships on their Facebook page. I believe we showed them a few podcasts back. Some of them, Marty showed them in the news. And from what I have seen lately, I believe they are going to visit one of the shows in Poland when it comes to miniatures. And they are going to present the system. So it should be out really soon. So this is also something that might catch interest with some people.
Nice. Awesome.
Oh wow! So Jen puts in the chat. Is it bad that I'm happy Jim has found some gaming outside of the house? I doubt it, Jen. Because guess what? You're probably coming with me. You can buy me a beer later, Jen. Okay, so now everyone's making fun of me in the chat. I see how it is. I'll send Jim with a 6-pack down next time he comes down. Yeah, I don't really drink beer that much. But no worries. Oh, so yeah, okay, Jen wants in the Aliens game. We got it. And then John also says, Piotr, you have to hit Ypres for the Menin Gate ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we shall see how the program is set up, because I don't have really time to check out everything that's going on the show during the trip. One thing for sure, that we are going to visit one of the airfield bases that was Luftwaffe, then it was NATO, and now it's turned into a museum, so not First World War, but a bonus.
Okay.
The parts of that all
All right. There's some
and
there's some background noise, Piotr. I hope everybody can hear him. Sorry about that, everyone.
yeah, I can hear it too.
Okay.
Something that is.
Hopefully it'll pass in a second. Cool. There we go. That's better. Okay. So awesome. So our topic today, guys, I'm always kind of at a loss to come up with a topic. I'm pretty much just what's going on lately, either in the world. We usually try to stay off Ukraine most of the time. We'll dip into it once in a while, just to make sure that I don't say anything galactically stupid. But also like what's been going on either on the team or in the community. And with what's going on with tomorrow's live stream game, what we're looking at here is the World War II roots of modern special forces. So, I mean, as everyone knows, okay, here on the Sitrep Podcast, we do historical wargaming with a focus on moderns, i.e. post-1945. So modern warfare has, of course, through the decades become, more and more asymmetrical, limited, and non-kinetic. So special forces have become more and more important because more and more conflicts in the world, you can't send, tank divisions and fleets of bombers to take care of the problem because it's just going to be counterproductive. So nations all over the world really are becoming a lot more reliant on two things. Number one, insurgencies if you're poor, and number two, special forces if you're rich. So when it comes to modern conflict, it's a lot more special forces. So we see a lot of special forces, especially in modern skirmish games. But from where do many of these units and forces draw their roots? There are whole games out there that are just about special operations in World War II. 0200 by Gray for Now Games, I think, is one of them. There's also a special operations, I think was an expansion for Force on Force that Ambush Alley came out with. So Ambush Alley, Force on Force is of course moderns, but then they went back to World War II for commando operations like 1940 forward. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about that. I'm pretty sure, Bill, you're probably gonna know a lot more about this than I do. The Rangers, I know, got their neck deep in, or it got started in World War II at Dieppe in '42. Were Rangers around before that, or?
Not as a formal unit. I mean, you could trace Ranger back to the Revolutionary War, even before that, really. But in modern days, Dieppe, you did have their action there, but a lot of it was based on work with their counterparts in the British Army, at Dieppe and everything. So the Rangers really came about closer to preparing for D-Day, as the infantry fighting force that we know it as,
Right.
where it really was organized. We really got to see the organizational charts and how it was really formed, really right before D-Day. I think they saw some limited action in Italy, but I mean D-Day was kind of like the turning point for what we know as modern day Rangers. Assaulting positions in an infantry based, company level or greater, because that's really what Rangers are. They are special forces or special operations forces. I think we need to differentiate between special forces and special operation forces because it gets confusing. But they really were tasked for taking airfields and other hard targets or doing what the normal infantry during World War II weren't set up to do. And you got to remember, at the time, Rangers were not airborne qualified. So you literally had what Rangers do now divided between airborne troops and the ground Ranger troops. So, as you see in D-Day with the 82nd, 101st, the first, was it 1st Airborne or 6th Airborne? I can't remember now. I think
It was 6th at Pegasus Bridge, and that's why 1st went into Arnhem.
So, a lot of those actions you saw during World War II is what modern day Ranger battalions do. So, it was just a really good growing process, that you see, those guys climbing the rope ladders and the grappling hooks up into to the barbed wire going, was it Saving Private Ryan is a good example. I know it's not one of your best movies, but they do show what the Rangers did encounter. So it is a good starting point.
Well, I can tell you this for free. I've actually been to Point du Hoc and peeked over that cliff, and good God, man. I wouldn't want to do that in like broad daylight, 30 years ago, when I was still in shape. Much less with, Germans with, stick grenades and MG42s up there, waiting for me.
Yeah.
That's a cliff. That's not an exaggeration. That is a like 110-foot cliff, almost straight down. The big 14-inch battleship shells, those craters are still there. They're a little bit filled in now because it's been 80 years, but the German concrete is still all cracked and shattered, not only from the battleship shelling, but also the demolition charges of the Rangers that day, and also the engineers trying to blow that stuff up, after the battle was over.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that going on, so it's an interesting place to visit. If I'm not too mistaken, I think there were 2 battalions of Rangers in Overlord, and then they were both supposed to hit Point du Hoc, and like a last-minute decision, they took 2 companies out of 2nd Battalion, and they moved them over to Omaha, and that's where we see, I think, Bravo and Charlie companies, 2nd Rangers. That's where we see the fictitious John Miller character in Saving Private Ryan. He starts off. They don't explicitly say this, but if you actually kind of jigsaw the history together, he's obviously the captain of Charlie Company's 2nd Battalion. So that's kind of, you can kind of infer that by where he is and, of course, his rank and so on and so forth. He's not Baker Company. I shouldn't have said, did I say Bravo before? I meant to say Baker. We know he's not in charge of Baker Company because Baker Company, there's a line in the movie where he says, they're basically taking away my company and the survivors are being moved over into Baker Company.
Yeah.
So, but most of the Rangers, I think the other 6 companies in those 2 battalions, it's usually 4 companies to a battalion, I think. Rangers might have a slightly different setup. And they went up there at Point du Hoc, and that's some scary stuff for sure.
Yeah. So just real quick, referencing the Ranger History tab, there were 6 Ranger battalions during World War II.
6 battalions?
6 battalions.
Oh, how many were at D-Day?
So let's see. At D-Day, 2 battalions at D-Day. It had 6 rifle companies, obviously size of a standard infantry battalion. But 1st, 3rd, and 4th were basically annihilated at Anzio, so they were in the Italian campaign. And 6th Ranger was in New Guinea, and then went into the Philippine campaign. So,
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, the 2nd Ranger was basically they based the Ranger companies or battalions off of British Commandos. So really,
Right.
if you think about it, British Commandos are kind of like the forefathers of all modern day special operation forces. Plain and simple. They pretty much are. I mean, a lot of...
Yeah, I can't argue with that because it's their first operations were at like Trondheim, Norway, or something like that. In like right off the bat, right after Norway fell, they were back. They pretty much got booted out of Norway late June. The war in France was already ongoing before the war in Norway had fully wrapped up, and then almost like 2, maybe 3 months later, they're back in. I'm not sure of the exact location in Norway, but British Commandos were back in. So that kind of, thank you, that segues over to our next force, the British Commandos. Again, this goes to your point, Bill, about whether or not, like, okay, there's special operations team. I'm not sure of the exact or let's agree on some nomenclature. There are special ops teams, or there are special teams that do like 12-man able teams. They're like Delta Force. There's usually a 6-man or a 12-man team. I think it's as small as it goes. Navy SEALs, true elite operator, tier 1, badasses. And then you get guys that are almost just like really, really good light infantry. Which are, I mean, if you want to call them special forces, I guess that's up to each individual or whatever. And I just bring this up because I think this is how the British Commandos kind of started. Because the British Royal Commandos, when they first started going into places like Norway and then later on places like Saint-Nazaire and stuff like that, they're going in like 400 and 500 strong. They're going in as like understrength battalions. And of course, Dieppe was practically a division, and that was a disaster. Operation Agreement, which we will feature tomorrow, was also a disaster because they basically tried to launch a temporary raid on Tobruk. It's like, okay, British, help us out here. You can either invade a place with a set piece, hit and stay assault, or you can launch a special forces raid. Yeah, pick a struggle, brother. Pick one or the other. This middle of the road stuff, where well, it's a raid, but not really. It's a division. It's none of them worked. Now, hopefully, fortunately, Operation Caravan, which we'll be doing tomorrow, was a success. But it's the only part of Operation Agreement that actually worked. There was like 4 separate operations all at once, and really only one of them worked because I think a lot of the other ones were just too big. And again, Marine Raiders, which we'll talk about in a second, Army Rangers. You're talking about 3, but almost half the order of battle was effectively wiped out in Anzio. Although Anzio is that's almost another whole Sitrep episode.
Yeah, you can have a whole
Anzio is
yeah.
My boy Lucas. Holy crap. Yeah. But yeah, I think sometimes when you get like too many special forces guys in one space, they're not just infantry. You're not supposed to kind of use them like that. So I think a lot of what we see in World War II history and also in our war games is, like you were saying, Bill, like the evolution of the idea. Because people in World War II, special operations, special forces were so new, at least how we think of them today, that they didn't really know how to use them in a lot of places.
Right.
Yeah, take into account, for example, the Polish silent unseen, as they were called, or cichociemni in Polish. So there were the guys trained by SOE. And so there were these special operations paratroopers that were dropped into occupied Poland during the years 1941, 1944. So I believe there were something about 316 guys dropped to Poland, occupied Poland, of course, at that time. During the war, and they were doing some sabotage stuff, and they were helping the home army. So they fought during the Warsaw Uprising. They were, destroying supply lines, doing stuff with blowing up bridges and stuff like that. So 116 of them, I believe, died during the operations, were captured by the Germans or the Soviets. And figure that out. So you drop a guy from an airplane, 2,000-3,000 miles away, and you land in an occupied country. That was your country, actually, and you wreak havoc over there. So there were many uses, and so the British started it all.
So you're saying like 316 guys? They didn't drop them all in one place in like battalion strength.
No.
Though. They were this is
no.
There were special operations raids like Saint-Nazaire. Saint-Nazaire is often held up as like a big success. They sent like 400 guys in there. 6 came back, and that was like 6 months later. They managed to escape through, I think, northern Spain. But nobody else came home. They all wound up being captured because there's no way home. So I think when it comes to special operations, especially in World War II, numbers matter, and you can't get carried away with too many. That's the whole point of special forces. Is it's got to be a small force.
Yeah, and when they were dropping the silent unseen guys, there were the drops of like 3 or 4 guys. So they were bringing some information from London, some from the Polish army in exile, to the home army command. So there were also couriers dropped with them, and they were supposed to be the elite of the home army, and they actually were. So everyone has their own.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The Polish Grom originates from them.
Yeah,
You can go a step further during World War II. The Polish paratroopers that were in Arnhem, they were freaking awesome. I mean, you could put them up against any of the airborne troops of World War II. Those guys fought, and I have to believe it's because they, Poland at the time was under German control, and they were like, we have something to prove. Because to be honest with you, if you look at history, the Polish soldier, airborne pilot was not treated well by their counterparts in some aspects, and they had to prove that, 1, they were worthy of it, and 2, they were just badasses. I mean, no doubt about it. I have a lot of respect for Polish troops and Polish airborne. I've had the honor of working with a few back in the day. A Polish military. So, you don't mess around with those guys. Unfortunately, when I was a kid, we had the joke, the German army went and invaded Poland and Poland countered with horses. But, I don't know. It takes a lot of balls to ride a horse against a panzer. Plain and simple, so all the most respect for those guys.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. We're lock over here.
If you think about it, it makes a great deal of logical sense. Okay, so it's one thing to you're a British citizen, a war started, the Germans might be invading. Oh wait, never mind, they're not invading. I'm supposed to do my part. Or if you're in the United States, the Japanese just bombed Pearl Harbor. Everyone's going down to the office and signing up. If you don't, pretty much no one's going to talk to you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
The attitude in the country was very different back then. So, I mean, okay. Especially in the Americans. I mean, nothing against the Greatest Generation, but 95% of those guys were drafted. As opposed to, okay, we all saw what happened in Poland. Okay. The ones that would fight, and I think one of the reasons why, I totally agree. I'm not arguing against what anybody's saying. I think part of the reason why the average Polish pilot, paratrooper, any of the branches that they served in were almost expected to be more badass than a lot of their counterparts is these are the guys that made it out. 2 million Polish wound up as like prisoners of war by the end of that September-October campaign in '39. So if a couple hundred or a couple thousand or maybe 10,000 of them made it out, these are like the cream rises to the top. Okay, these are the guys that made it out. These are the guys that made it into a friendly country. Their war is supposed to be over. They're not being drafted. There's no conscription. No one's expecting them to do anything. In fact, they just got the hell kicked out of them in one of the most one-sided campaigns in military history. They're coming back for more. Okay, so right off the bat, there's a certain fiber in just the motivation and the background of the recruit or not conscript, but whoever it is that's actually joining the force. That there's going to be something there. Paratroopers were the same way. You couldn't get drafted into the paratroopers in World War II. It just wasn't legal. You couldn't be drafted into the Marines. You had to be a volunteer. So anyone who's going to volunteer, I think they even say that once in Band of Brothers. Why did you join the paratroopers? Well, I don't want to serve alongside conscripts. I want to serve next to other guys that want to be here.
Right.
Because there is a definite difference. There is a definite difference.
Yep. You need a purpose.
Okay, so let's catching up here with the chat. John says 0200 looks great. I haven't checked it out myself, but I know it's out there and I know kind of what it covers, kind of what we're talking about here. John says, my understanding on the World War II Rangers is that they are based on the Commandos. Okay, yeah, we're kind of having the same conversation here. And the Special Service Brigades. John also adds, the fun stuff with D-Day and Special Forces are the Jedburgh teams. I'm not familiar with that term, I'll be honest with you. The other raid that's great is the Brenneval raid to seize the radar emplacement. Yeah, there were raids all over the place. And the fun thing with the British is that a lot of them were, also the Americans too. Let's face it, the Americans were in Dieppe. Dieppe is an absolute cluster. Infamously so. And in terms of Dieppe, okay, cool. The commando side is the only side that worked. Lord Lovett's troops took their objective and pulled out in good order. Yeah, I was going to say, Lord Lovett was at D-Day, so he must have survived. But the Canadians got absolutely fed into the wood chipper at Dieppe. The Canadians did not.
Yeah.
No fault of their own, God knows. But the Rangers also, I think 1st Rangers went in there, and it didn't go well. At all. But super fast, one of the other ones that we're going to talk about, especially tomorrow, is Long Range Desert Group. Again, we're going to talk about this a great deal tomorrow, so I won't spend too much time on it today. This is where it gets complicated, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is to almost head off some comments that we might be getting as far as where Long Range Desert Group begins and where the SAS, picks up. These two are two separate forces. They worked so closely through part of their early history that they almost become indistinguishable, and then they sort of divided again. Long Range Desert Group was first. They, like a lot of special forces in World War II, started off strictly as reconnaissance. They barely gave them weapons. They weren't supposed to shoot at anybody. And it was only later on in the conflict that they started to actually take more aggressive action. Long Range Desert Group was a desert survival organization. They had guys from New Zealand and Rhodesia that were running around in those deserts for like the Imperial Geographical Survey or something. Basically go out there and find because there's literally no one's been out there ever. Go help us map these areas. When World War II starts, how are we going to keep track of these Italian forces and later on German forces that are coming up from ports as far away as Benghazi and Tripoli? That's like 1,500 miles behind the lines in those days. We need to get eyes on those ports. Who can drive out there and actually come back with some information? Well, these guys were the ones. The SAS kicks off a little bit later in the conflict. November of 41, I think their first operation was part of Operation Crusader. An absolute disaster. They lost a third of their force and completely blew the mission. It was damn near the end of David Sterling's career. I know the SAS are bad guys, but everybody's a noob sometime. And then when they found more success, I feel, we're going to see a little bit of this in tomorrow's game, where, okay, the SAS are the combat badasses, but they can't find their way around the desert. Almost nobody can. Let's hook them up with the LRDG. The LRDG is going to get them to the target, and then the SAS is actually going to carry out the strike. Meanwhile, the LRDG is like, holy crap, those are like explosions and people are shooting at each other, and we can do that. We can throw grenades at Italian aircraft and stuff like that. So then you see stuff like Operation Caravan. So the two sides almost started to swap roles. They learned a great deal from each other, to where they became damn near synonymous. Because again, they started off with different missions. The LRDG learned the SAS trade. The SAS trade learned the LRDG trade. And before you know it, you had two forces that were so similar. They also like traded members, and they all worked together a lot. So it's almost pointless trying to keep track of the two different forces, until you get to the end of the end of January of 43, where number one, Sterling gets captured, and number two, the LRDG is out of a job. So the SAS takes a big hit when their founder gets captured, spends the rest of the war in a prisoner of war camp. And number two, LRDG, well, the Desert War is pretty much wrapping up at this point. They made an attempt to expand their use into the Balkans. It didn't really work out. So this is the reason the SAS has survived, and of course is around today, along with the SBS. And the LRDG, not so much. Nowadays, or I shouldn't say nowadays, 30 years ago, you've got the SAS doing scud hunting missions in the Gulf War. Kind of what the LRDG was doing in some of the very, very similar vehicles. 50 years later in 1991. And then you got guys that didn't survive the war. There were no Marine Raider battalions after 1942. The Marines walked away from that concept. Marines wouldn't have special forces again until MARSOC came along. I'm not even sure when that started. I can promise you that was not a thing when I was in.
I think that was 2015-ish.
Yes, they're very recent.
Yeah, they've only been around, less than 10 years. So
I won't lie, I was amazed to hear that.
Well, there's a joke. Sorry, this will be at the expense of the Marines, but the Army has Special Forces, Delta, Rangers. Navy has SEALs. The Air Force had pararescue, PJs. The Marines felt left out, so the Department of Navy gave them something and they called it MARSOC. So
the Marines, I thought you were going to say all Marines are Special Forces.
Well, we used to be told that all the time. How the Marines were so elite and special.
That's the story that they hand out in the Marine Corps, is when you're in the Marine Corps and they ask, how come we don't have Green Berets? How come we don't have, there's Marine Recon, but that wasn't really like in a special force. Why the Marines, and the answer that they always hand out within the Marine Corps is the United States Marine Corps is an elite force. That might work for some jarhead noob right out of Pendleton or MCRD Paris Island. It's not really the truth. The truth is, and you see this in how quickly the Marine Raider battalions were kind of disbanded. We just kind of got shit canned the idea. Marines this is why I was surprised to hear about MARSOC when that development took place. Marines have had a borderline, I don't want to say fear, but they've been very, very wary of establishing a special force and becoming thought of or being thought of as a small elite unit, because the Navy SEALs aren't a branch. They don't have a seat on the Joint Chiefs.
Right.
Royal Marine Commandos are not a branch. Delta Force, not a branch. The U.S. Marine Corps is a branch. We have a seat on the Joint Chiefs. There have been Marine generals as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. We don't have our own department, but we do have our own branch. And ever since the Marines, since 1775, the Army's been asking, why do we have these? Why do we have two armies? And you read that in the literature. When Secretary of the Navy Forrestal got out of a landing craft on Iwo Jima, on day 5 of Iwo Jima, he looked up at the flag on Mount Suribachi, and he looked over at, I think it was Holland Mad General Jim Smith. And he's like, that flag on that mountain means a Marine Corps for the next 500 years. The Marines have always been the smallest brother in a starving family, and we were always watching out to being just kind of quietly snuffed out of existence by either the Navy or, well, the Navy kind of takes care of us, but really the Army. Because especially after World War II, Anzio, Salerno, I mean, Anzio's a bad example, but Salerno, D-Day, the Philippines, New Guinea, we can jump out of a boat too. You know,
Yeah.
why do we, the Army demonstrated that they could conduct amphibious operations. So why is there a Marine Corps? Why don't we just make the Marine Corps like this elite little badass special force that runs around and kicks ass? The Marines have always been wary of that. So they've been very averse in setting up a special force for decades, if not centuries. And apparently the wheel finally turned. I don't know. But yeah, for a while, like those Marine radar battalions were disbanded. And it was like the special daggers that they had and their patches, and like everything was kind of removed from the record. And they've walked away from that idea for a long time. It's kind of surprising, but hey, that's pretty much just food for thought. Hello, yeah. Benny Johnson. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, Ben says, "Damn, look who it is." That's right. Sitrep Six is back.
Hey, Ben.
Apparently, we were doing such a bad job. He had to come back and save us. We were going all over the.
And he's talking about marine socks.
Yeah, that's I'm used to it. You know what? It's all. It's doesn't even bother me. We already know. We already know. We don't have to get passive aggressive and defend ourselves because we just know it's all a thing. It's fine. All right, but I won't beat up the whole idea of the SAS and the long range desert group because we're going to be talking about it quite a bit tomorrow. So then you've got guys like the Foreign Legion who were technically around before World War II. Again, that might be more on that whole like elite light infantry sort of the side of the spectrum here. Other than that, yeah. Now I did look up Polish Special Forces yesterday, and I did find them. I found the one you were talking about, like the Grom you were talking about, Piotr. I didn't see a lineage back to World War II. But I admit I did like 5 minutes of research. So thanks for
no straight lineage. You know, they just they supposedly try to how to say it in English. They go back to the tradition of the silent unseen. They trace their traditions back to them. And when you talk about Grom, you have to talk about the silent unseen, despite the fact that we were then occupied by the Soviets for 45 years and we were a communist country. So
this is where we get into some of the guys. We're talking about special forces that didn't survive World War II. The Brandenburger Regiments. Okay, Germany has GSG-9 nowadays. Do they really draw a lineage back to the Brandenburger Regiment? Even if they did, they probably wouldn't admit it because 1939 to 1945, Germany has a whole identity issue that they might not want to get into, to put it lightly.
They were on vacation.
Yeah. But we also had, a 4th Special Volunteer Detachment of the Soviet Navy mixed with the GRU become Spetsnaz. Again, there's been so many changes over there. I mean, technically, these guys were around in the Russian Civil War as far back as 1919. But then Stalin comes in, kills everybody off. The Germans come in, they kill everybody off again. Khrushchev comes in, he wipes out everybody who was, Khrushchev, I should say, wipes out everybody who was loyal to Stalin. And then it just, there's so many changes. How many times can you, tear down the house and rebuild it before you've lost sort of a, not everybody has like these long 100-year-old regiments like the British do, where they can literally trace a direct line back to God knows when, God knows where. Sometimes it's not quite that, the garden, all the soil in the garden gets flipped over too many times. But, just kind of rambling at this point. All right, guys, so we've been up for about an hour and 15 minutes. Again, kind of a short episode today. Any other thoughts or comments from Bill or Piotr?
Just real quick on this whole topic of the special operations, special forces, how do you relate this to gaming? It shows you that there's many levels to play. So, it doesn't always have to be like Delta Force or U.S. Special Forces, Green Berets, there are 12-man teams in ODA, but and you have such a varied period. So I challenge people to explore outside the typical skirmish games right now. Spectre and some of these other ones out there. Look at some of the bigger battles. You want a really interesting special operations battle? Check out the Invasion of Panama.
Oh, Just
Personal
Cause.
to my heart.
Just Cause, yeah.
Just Cause, because I can tell you right here, there's a huge debate. The SEALs should not have taken the airport. That should have been the Rangers. And you'll see the aftermath of what happened to the SEALs at the airport. So there's many scenarios that you can play and game, from World War II on up. So I just watched, I can't remember the name of it. Watch how the SAS really came into the limelight before was it 80, 81, when they took the London embassy, for Iran.
Yep.
That raid. Before that, they were really kind of in the shadows, really, and were kind of, almost plausible deniability. And then there they are on worldwide news raiding the embassy. So there are so many different things outside of the typical Spectre and some of these other game sets you see out there. Explore them and play them. And there's so many miniatures now for modern special operations that the world is open to it. So enjoy.
What we'll have up tomorrow is Valor and Victory, I guess I should say. So 4 to 8 men in a counter. The historical raid had 47 men. So not quite like a British Commando with 500 people in it, and not a 6 or 12 man elite operator one team, sort of in the middle there. I think this is one of the smaller ones. Operation Agreement had thousands. Whether or not that's a special operations raid, probably not. Also, look at the way it turned out. Absolute train wreck. Not unlike Dieppe, which was happening at almost the same time. Like literally a month before, August of 42 and September of 42, like back to back, just disasters with these bloated, oversized special forces raids. So anyway, we'll be doing a little bit of that tomorrow, but absolutely, for the community. It's tough to do larger battles in a skirmish system, but again, there's other systems that you could do. Force on force is a pretty good. You can do relatively large battles in force on force if you're really serious. Or again, there's other unit-based games. Where not every miniature on the table is just a single guy, because it'd be tough to do. Sun is air at 1-to-1 scale. I mean, there was like 300 guys at least, plus all the boats, plus the Germans. The Germans are about, depending on when in the battle, between 500 and 1,500. You have to use some sort of unit-based mechanic for that because it's crazy at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I remember Warren was doing something like of a project when it comes to Saint-Nazaire some years back.
Yeah, I was hooked up with them for a while. we had a lot of brisk discussions on the phone and on Skype about how to do this, and I'm like, doing this at 1-to-1 in miniature is going to be really hard because you're going to have like 800 miniatures on the table. He's like, it's going to be epic. I'm like, yeah, it'll be epic if it never gets done. Here are some options, and I still want to do it in Valor and Victory. One of these days, we just missed it. It's March of 42, right? With Saint-Nazaire. So we've missed the 80th anniversary. But one of these days, we're going to do Saint-Nazaire. Because sometimes miniatures are tough. I mean, we did Midway. We were talking about doing Midway before Bill left. And we were going to print out all these ships and stuff like that. And I was like, guys, this is a big, big battle. There's like 290 ships if you include everything in there. Can we maybe? And then we wound up doing it virtually. And even that, with me and Rasmus, that was 2 4.5-hour streams. That was a 9-hour battle. Sometimes you gotta, pick a level and assess the best system for it.
That's true.
So John says the Commandos after D-Day really became light infantry. So yeah, we definitely played a lot with Royal Marine Commandos and Royal Para Commandos in what was that, 3rd Commando Brigade in the Falklands. So multiple battalions from different regiments were in that one. Trying to remember them now off the top of my head. Let me not get into it, but 3rd Para was definitely there. One of the 44th and 45th. Here I go, just thinking I wasn't going to get into it. Several Royal Marine Commando battalions were there. We've done some of those battles, again, in Valor and Victory. And that's where they just become elite light infantry. So absolutely agree, John, for sure.
Does this mean that we're doing, a lot of stuff with special forces that we are also elite or something like that?
I literally came up because I was like, I was like trying to type up a topic last night, and I was like, what's a good topic? And it's literally like, I don't want to rename the segment, but it's like, what's on Oriskany's brain this week? The sad, ruined remnants that is Oriskany's brain housing group. What's smoldering in those gears? Smoldering, sparking gears. And I'm literally designing a Special Forces game in World War II for tomorrow. So I'm like, hey, let's talk about Special Forces in World War II, because I don't have room in my brain for 2 topics at once. So, someone else has to start coming up with topics. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking about what Jim's going to be gaming tomorrow. But in all seriousness. All right, guys. Unless there's anything else from the team, I'm catching up here on the chat. There doesn't seem to be too much else. Ben says, good to see you. I guess, he's definitely talking to you, Bill.
Yeah.
Jen says, just a taste. Keep them wanting more. Yeah, so we're definitely going to get into the LRDG and SAS tomorrow. There won't be any SAS on the table, but there will be discussion because the SAS was attacking another airfield at the same time somewhere else. Again, these 2 teams, these 2 forces really did work together a great deal. Learned a lot from each other during the pretty much late 41 and early 42. Late 41 and all of 42. By 43, they've kind of parted ways. Other than that, I'm pretty much done. There's nothing else in the chat, nothing else from the team. Guys, looks like we are rounds complete once again for another episode here on the Sitrep Podcast. Thanks very much, as always, of course, to Bill and to Piotr, and of course, everybody who came out. We had a pretty good audience today. I think we peaked at like 8 or 9 members watching us. Again, if you're checking this out on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Doesn't cost anybody anything, and it really does help us out. Since I've been pinging people to please give us the thumbs up, our subscribers have gone up because the algorithm notices you and puts you out in front of more people. And,
Most definitely.
The more people see us, the more people like us because we're awesome. I mean, I'm not going to lie anymore. In all seriousness, guys, this is Oriskany Jim signing off. We are rounds complete. Tango Mike for listening as always. Check us out tomorrow, and also we'll have some more content for you in the middle of the week. But for now, we're signing off. Thanks again, and we'll be in touch very soon. Take care, everybody.
Take care.